For decades, we've relied on a chemical shield to protect our crops and, feed the world. But what if that shield has a cost we're only just beginning to truly understand? Today, we're unpacking the story of synthetic pesticides, a technology that is, in every sense of the word, a double-edged sword.
This quote, man, it just gets right to the heart of the whole issue, doesn't it? These chemicals were designed with one very specific job: kill the pest. But in the real world, things are messy. They don't just stay in their lane. They are powerful, they're active, and their effects, well, they ripple out across entire ecosystems in ways we never ever intended.
So, let's start with that initial promise. The idea of a chemical shield for agriculture was nothing short of revolutionary. I mean, for the first time, farmers had a tool that could practically guarantee a harvest, protecting it from the constant threat of pests. It was all about ensuring our food security.
But, and this is the big but, here's the catch. When you spray a field, those chemicals don't just hit the pest and then vanish into thin air. Nope. They enter what scientists call the soil, plant, animal, human continuum. Basically, they become part of the very fabric of our environment, getting absorbed by the soil, taken up by plants, eaten by animals, and ultimately by us. So how do these chemicals actually do what they do? Let's dive into the mechanics of what makes them so incredibly effective at killing pests and at the exact same time so disruptive to pretty much everything else.
Okay, this is really interesting. There are basically two main strategies at play. First, you have your contact pesticides. Think of these as a surface-level attack. They have to physically touch the pest to work. But then you have systemic pesticides. These get absorbed by the plant itself, turning the entire organism, from its roots to its leaves, even its pollen, into a tiny, toxic weapon. It's a really clever strategy, but as we're about to see, it has some major downstream consequences.
And this table here breaks down the three main classes perfectly. Insecticides, they go after the nervous system. They basically scramble an insect's nerve signals, causing total paralysis. Herbicides, like the famous glyphosate, work by shutting down essential pathways that plants need to grow. And fungicides, they attack the very cell structure of fungi. Each one is a highly specialized weapon designed for a specific enemy.
So here's a crucial point to remember. After a pesticide is applied, its story is far from over. In fact, it's really just the beginning of a long, complicated journey through the environment. And where it ends up? Well, that's not always predictable. To really understand that journey, you need to know this term, persistence. It's measured by something called DT50, which is basically its half-life. All this tells us is how long a chemical hangs around in the environment. A short half-life, and it breaks down pretty quick. A long half-life means it's going to be a part of the ecosystem for a long, long time. And to put that into perspective, just look at this number. The infamous insecticide DDT has a soil half-life of up to 15 years. Think about that. If it were sprayed today, half of it could still be lurking in the soil a decade and a half from now. It's a really sobering reminder of the lasting legacy these chemicals can leave behind.
So, a few different factors decide a pesticide's fate. One is sorption. That's how tightly it latches onto soil particles. If it binds tight, it might stick around, poisoning soil life for longer. Then there's degradation. That's nature's cleanup crew. Microbes or sunlight breaking it down. And then you've got weathering. In places with intense heat and monsoons like South Asia, rain can just wash these chemicals straight into rivers and streams with incredible speed.
Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about the consequences of this long journey. Let's look at how all this builds into a cascade of effects on all the organisms that weren't the target. Because when you disrupt one part of an ecosystem, the effects never ever stop there. The damage often starts right under our feet, in the soil. These chemicals can wipe out the beneficial microbes that are absolutely essential for cycling nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus. They can also harm earthworms, the little engineers of the soil, which messes up their ability to create that healthy, aerated soil structure we need. It's like an invisible war with very visible consequences for soil fertility.
And that brings us right back to those systemic pesticides we talked about earlier. Remember, these things make the whole plant toxic. So, what happens to the creatures we actually want to visit that plant? Like, say, pollinators.
For bees, this is an absolute disaster. The very nectar and pollen they need to survive becomes a source of poison. And get this, even at doses that don't kill them outright, what we call sublethal doses, these chemicals can cause severe disorientation. It's like it messes with their internal GPS. A bee can't find its way back to the hive, and for a social colony, a lost bee is as good as a dead one. And of course, we have to talk about the risks to human health, which kind of fall along a spectrum. First, there's acute toxicity. This is the immediate bad stuff from a single high dose. Then there's chronic exposure, the slow buildup from low doses over many years, which has been linked to serious long-term diseases. And then there's endocrine disruption, where even microscopic amounts can interfere with our hormones, impacting everything from fertility to development.
So, faced with this incredibly complex web of consequences, the question becomes, what do we do? How do we move forward? How do we manage pests without poisoning the planet and ourselves? How in the world do we restore the balance? The solution, it seems, requires a fundamental shift in our thinking. We have to move away from the old model of chemical suppression, just trying to annihilate every single pest, and move toward a new path of ecological regulation. This means working with nature's own systems and using chemicals as a last resort, not a first response. And the good news is we have the tools for this. This isn't just a fantasy. It starts with things like Integrated Pest Management, or IPM, which teaches farmers to monitor pests and only spray when absolutely necessary. It's about helping farmers tell the good bugs from the bad bugs. On a bigger scale, policy changes can shift subsidies towards safer alternatives. And we can even manage the habitat itself to bring back the farm's natural predators, its biological pressure valves. Ultimately, this is the provocative question we're left with. Synthetic pesticides gave us a sense of control, but it came at a massive ecological price. The challenge for us now is to see if we can be smarter. Can we align our tools with biological intelligence and learn to manage pests by working with nature, instead of being in a constant battle against it?